I think if you do this long enough, every dungeon master eventually tries something that goes horribly badly. Not just an encounter that goes badly, like a dragon crits twice and now you've got a dead barbarian on the ground. That stinks. The player's unhappy about that. But there's other things that go wrong in the planning and expectations of the dungeon master in trying to think what the players will do and not planning very well. The things where you come up with a trap or a whole dungeon design, like it's going to work like this and it'll be great. Or a set piece moment, you're like, no, if I have this moment happen in the game, it'll be epic and players will talk about it for months. Or a system where it's like, I think I know how I'm going to do overland encounters and it's going to work this way. And it'll be super cool and the players will discover secrets and I won't know where they are. They'll just appear and it'll be this kind of emergent world. This will be great. And those aren't necessarily bad ideas, just sometimes they don't land super well. They land badly and the players will be looking at you going, what were you thinking? This was back in the 4th edition era of Dungeons & Dragons, and we were starting a new campaign, and the players wanted to play Viking-esque characters against giants. So I set it in my normal campaign world on the western coast in a place called the Granite Isles. And the people there are called the Gothi, and they had started colonizing the highlands on the main shore, on the mainland, in a place called the Gothan Highlands. Unbeknownst to the Gothi, somebody already calls that home. Bunch of fire giants, frost giants, warring giant tribes that have finally had enough of all these people, dwarves, elves, halflings, humans, all coming in and taking what was theirs. So they're going to start fighting back under the leadership of the fire giant emperor Skjeg. And we're going to start with the Gothan Highlands. In the first session, we play the parents of the eventual characters as they guard the ships and the children leave, and those are eventually going to be our characters. Second session, 15 years later, we're now playing the characters that are now refugees on the Granite Islands. I'm going to have the fire giants send ogres on trireme ships to go besiege the Granite Islands to get rid of them once and for all, while the fire giants and the frost giants turn their attention to other more important matters than these few remnant Gothi on this one island. There are 4 ships coming up on the bay, and they're going to lay siege to the town where our players live. And one of the ogre ships pulls ahead of the others and makes landfall, and the ogres jump out of the ship and start assaulting the shield wall of the Vikings. And I think what's going to happen is the players are going to realize we're level 1 characters. That is 400 pounds of meat, sinew, muscle, brawn, 400 pounds of ogre with a giant tree stump the size of, well, us. And if I go forward into melee, I am going to get batted down in the dirt like a nail. This is not going to end well for me. Oh, look, siege engines. Let's use those and we'll sink those 3 other ships that are coming up so that no more reinforcements can get to the Vikings, and the proper Vikings, the adult Vikings, they can handle the shield wall. Does that sound like a Viking fantasy to you? Probably not. A Viking fantasy would be taking part of that shield wall. And sure, I thought we'd eventually get there, but not now. But that's not what the players thought. The players thought, shield wall! And one of them, in a 4th edition era, there is a thing called marking, and allows you to mark everyone. So it's kind of like a threat mechanic. And all the other monsters take a negative if they do not attack the person that marked them. So he runs forward and marks all the ogres. Now these are ogre minions. They have 1 hit point. But 1 hit point doesn't matter if you can't hit all of them. And if you miss, they're all going to smack you. And an ogre minion does the damage of an ogre. And it also has the attack of an ogre and the armor class of an ogre. So it smacks them. Several of them smack this fighter, I think he was, and he is now a dead fighter. The cleric enters the scene and goes rushing forward to try to heal the dying fighter. James, being a tactical dungeon master, likes to play the enemies realistically, as the ogres attack the cleric. Dead cleric. Okay, now the ranger rushes forward to try to pull them back to safety. For some reason, I haven't learned my lesson at this point, and I attack the ranger. Dead ranger. Now the witch, the sorceress, I think she was, runs off and goes, oh, no, I'm getting out of here. And we end the campaign. 2 sessions. Usually lasts years for me. I usually get to 17th, 16th level, somewhere around there. And they're all looking at me going, what is this, James? They've played with me before, some since college. And I'm like, what are you doing? And we talked it out. And I kind of explained what I thought would happen. They, of course, explained, no, of course we're going to take place in the shield wall. We wanted to play Vikings. Vikings go into shield walls. That's what's cool. We want to do that. I don't know why this one didn't dawn on me that that's what they'd want to do up front, but it's what they wanted to do. And I failed, and then I stuck to my guns, and I wasn't willing to adjust it. Now, we did come back to it. I basically retconned it and said, no, we're going to redo this because that's what you wanted to play. And I'm sorry, that stunk. Shouldn't have done it. This is entirely on me. I don't normally retcon things, but because this is my fault for not anticipating what you wanted and what would have made an interesting game. Keep in mind, I don't object to players dying. I just object to me totally misreading what kind of campaign we were in. I'm going to retcon it, let you come back to it. So fast forward years, and now it's a few months ago. We're playing Curse of Strahd with some players. And to me, Gothic horror has a couple of iconic moments. And one of those moments is the midnight ride, where you are trying to escape supernatural enemies and you have to get to something, usually a bridge, to escape them. If only you can make it that far, then they will become powerless, like Sleepy Hollow.
Once you cross that bridge, my friends, the ghost is through. His power ends.
There's usually like Dracula and vampires and werewolves chasing them, and it is Curse of Strahd, so there are vampires and werewolves. Let's have some of those chasing a cart on the way from Vallaki to whatever that town is on the western side, northwest coast. Kresk? I think it's Kresk. And we'll have this kind of set piece moment. See, warning signs. We're getting that thing where I want a specific moment to happen again. And careful, where they're going to encounter overwhelming forces. Again, with the ogres, the overwhelming forces. And they're going to attack the cart, and we have to set up some sort of challenges that can prevent the cart from getting there. We'll have situations where trees come down, there's things on the road, and the horses carrying the vampires will come up. We need some mechanics so that you can use the cart to kind of like push people off of cliffs. What happens if players get off of cliffs? We need a secondary road, and I do this whole thing. And it works. Because I told the players exactly what was expected, because the characters knew what was expected. As they come to this intersection right outside Vallaki, they see to the north, on the way to the tower, if you're familiar, that there is someone on the cliff. The sun is going down, and as it dips below the horizon, the last little instances of sunlight glint off unsheathed swords, and there you can see Rodin on a horse, a nightmare, leading a legion of vampire spawn. Says, the master commands you. Seize them, capture Arena alive. They hear the howl of werewolves, 30, 40 of them in the woods. They're a distance off, but if they catch up, you are overwhelmed. There is no way you can fight off 40 werewolves. Who delivers that information? Arena does. Oh God, the whole pack is here. We cannot possibly escape all of them. There's a bridge on the way to Kresk. My brother told me about it. If we can get there, they will lose their power. We can blow up the bridge. We can't face 40 werewolves, but we can blow up one bridge with your fire magic. Go, now! And they race to the bridge because they know the goal, because Arena would know the goal, and the players, the characters would know the goal. The characters are familiar with this world. And unlike what I did with the ogres, where I expected the players to make that leap, I just let the characters make that leap and go, your characters are aware that that is the sound of a pack of werewolves. That means there are 20 to 40 of them, and that is overwhelming odds. The high likelihood that one or more of you is going to die, and it's possible the rest of you will join the werewolf pack as new werewolves. And the vampires that are trying to stop the cart, you might be able to defeat, but not before they can slow down the cart, in which case you will not be able to get to the bridge in time. What about this bridge? Why wouldn't the werewolves be able to cross it? Aha! I had Arena give that information. No, the water is too fast. The werewolves cannot cross it. They'll have to go miles around, and by then, they won't know where we are. And the players loved it, because it was thematic. It was very much what you imagine for a gothic ride through midnight on a cart horse, with vampire spawn being shoved off cliffs, swinging it one way to the other way. At one point, the monk jumps off and has to destroy a tree trunk with his fists before the cart can get through. Meanwhile, they're fighting off the vampires. They grab Ismark at one point and haul him off while the fighter pulls back and manages a 20, compared to the vampire spawns 1 on a strength challenge to pull Ismark back onto the cart. Because I told them the stakes. They knew I don't have to fight these. I just have to get to the bridge. That's all I need to do. And then our wizard can destroy the bridge with a fireball and we're all good to go. That's what the challenge is. Telling them up front what the characters would know, but the players may not make that leap of deduction because they are looking at this in a 3D space, in this case on Roll20. I could have done the same thing with ogres. I could have had one of the Vikings say, "No, you are too young to take part in the shield wall. Man the ballista with the other younglings and shoot down the ships before they get here so that we do not have reinforcements." I don't know what accent that is. Swedish chef, really. If you are going to have these set piece moments, which are normally not something in a Dungeons and Dragons game, certainly maybe don't do 2 of them right off the bat like I did with the Vikings, where there's the moment to rescue the kids and get them to escape, and then, oh yes, let's repeat that again and have another shipyard thing where you're trying to defend against oncoming hordes of ogres. It's basically the same thing in reverse. That was dumb too. Set up the conditions and tell them what it is. But more importantly, learn from your mistakes. Talk about it with your players. And it hurts. Like, they're mad at you, and they're going to be telling you that you're terrible at this if they're bad friends. If they're good friends, they'll say, "Nah, man, it happens." And they'll give you honest feedback. And then you can take that and go, "Look, let's do it again." I don't normally recommend a retcon. Let the dice fall where they may. But if it's this bad, if you totally party wipe a group because not that they failed a check or they didn't make their saves or the damage was that high, or sometimes players do stupid things. It does happen, and you kind of got to let them live with those consequences. If that happens, okay, the character dies. It stinks. See video about dealing with that. But let that be what happens. If it's your mistake, because you didn't read the room right, because you misjudged fantasy, or you failed to remember that they are not their characters, you can give them that information so that they can make reasonable choices. And at that point, if they decide, no, we're going to go join the shield wall, or we're getting out of this cart and we're going to fight these werewolves, that is on them. You told them what was going to happen. They're not going to be happy with you if they die, but you did tell them explicitly what was there. And you did learn from the mistakes. You did go, okay, it didn't work with the ogres. It is working with the cart. What made that different? The same thing that made it different when I had them play their adult characters guarding their future characters was I told them all you had to do was get the children to the boats. These characters are doomed because they're pre-made by me. We're going to play your characters. You just have to use these pre-made characters to get the survivors to the boats. And they did. And they enjoyed it because I told them what was the expectation. And then I learned from my mistake the second time. And then I made it better the third time. So I'll use set piece moments from time to time. There are campaigns about certain things, and Vikings taking part in a shield wall is part of it. A midnight ride in a gothic horror campaign is part of it. If you are in Dragonlance and you do not eventually ride a dragon and have some sort of aerial combat with a Dragonlance, I don't know, why are you playing Dragonlance then? If you're playing, I don't know, Spelljammer, and there's no ship-to-ship combat in space, why are you bothering to play Spelljammer? That's what I want. That's the thing that makes this fantasy real. You may misjudge the situation. Your idea may not be great the first time out. That's cool. We all get better at this. Make it better. Iterate on it. Make it work the next time. Your players will forgive you as long as you are willing to say, whoa, yep, nope, screwed that up. Let's come back to it next week. I will fix this. Till next time, Dungeon Masters, remember, you're a player too. Try to have some fun.